W5. A dream vacation to a tropical paradise.
We decided to plan a girls' trip. Mexico seemed to be the place to do it.
Shattered by brutal violence.
They all took a turn raping me.
And ignored by local authorities.
They never took it seriously.
Avery Haynes investigates accusations of sexual assaults.
6 different women have come to you saying, I was sexually abused by hotel staff.
Correct.
Vacation hotspots where some tourists become victims.
My attackers were staying in the same hotel that I was in.
And justice is hard to find.
Did anyone say to you, we need to call the police?
No, not at all.
And dreaming of the stars.
I've always been fascinated by space.
Leads one man to rise to the challenge.
He'll be a great space flyer.
And venture into space.
I can't wait for that view to be in my face.
Peter Ackman, with the making of Canada's newest astronaut.
Are you scared about this mission?
I'd be naive if I wasn't scared.
The training, the risks.
You're all going to die eventually anyway. The real question is, what do you do while you're alive?
The determination to conquer the final frontier.
It gives me hope that humans have this in themselves.
Here is Kevin Newman.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. This week, we're reporting the results of a 6-month investigation into the horror some women are experiencing in places they expect to be safe and secure. Avery Haynes and our W5 team have uncovered multiple cases of women being raped at all-inclusive resorts. And then when they summon the courage to report it, they're finding few allies in their host countries or here at home.
All-inclusive resorts, an escape from reality.
I have 2 girls, and I don't want to die.
A place where you can just kick back, sink into the sand, and soak up the sun.
His job is to keep me safe. Instead, he rapes me.
All-you-can-eat buffets, an endless supply of drinks.
I realized I was in imminent danger.
Every year, millions of Canadians flock to Mexico and the Caribbean to splurge on worry-free, all-inclusive getaways. But what happens when paradise turns into a nightmare?
We decided to plan a girls' trip, and Mexico seemed to be the place to do it.
What are you thinking? Here I am, I'm getting to go to Mexico with my mom.
I'd never been on an airplane before, anywhere fun before, so yeah, that was exciting.
In July of 2016, Alicia Pickering surprised her then 16-year-old daughter with an escape to the Rio Santa Fe, an all-inclusive resort in Los Cabos, Mexico.
It was a lot of fun. We woke up and would have breakfast and play in the pool, and we did her excursion to see the dolphins, and that was pretty thrilling for me to fulfill that fantasy for her.
On your last day, everything changed.
Yeah. Sorry, it's really difficult to talk about.
Difficult to talk about because of what happened at the family pool. It started with an encounter with a group of men who said they were from Los Angeles on a bachelor party vacation.
They got to chit-chatting with us, and they had music playing, and I didn't think anything of accepting a top-up of my drink from a bottle that they had. And I started to feel really inebriated, but not in the typical sense where you've had too much alcohol. There came a point in time where I'm getting up and I'm looking around for my daughter, and I don't see her. And I asked the men, like, where's Lauren? Like, they knew we were mother-daughter, or knew our names, and they're like, oh, I don't know, let's go look for her.
Unstable, Alicia says she's taken by the arms by 2 of the men.
I was led up the steps to where the rooms are, and I kept saying, like, where are we going? you know, like I need to find Lauren. The door was opened and I was pushed from behind into the room.
For Lauren, this is the first time she's hearing the explicit details of what happened next to her mother.
I was confronted with 5 men. They were standing in a circle in front of the door, stark naked and masturbating. I said, holy hell no. And I turned and I went to grab the door and my hand slipped off, and as I'm trying to get it again, I'm grabbed and he has both his hands around my neck. And I thought, I still hadn't found my daughter. And he was starting to choke me. And the first thought was Lauren, and the second thought was, oh dear God, please save me. He squeezed, and I was, the sound, I just remember the sound of the air escaping my lungs, making this horrible sound. And then just as I didn't think I could hold it any longer, one of the males behind me said, dude, that's enough, let her go. And as soon as he said that, he released me. And the man that had told him to stop proceeded to rape me. They all took a turn raping me.
In the hours and days that followed, Alicia says she felt violated again by the way she was treated by the hotel and by the Canadian tour company who flew her to Mexico. Sexual assaults at all-inclusive resorts are not isolated. W5 has spent the last 6 months compiling horror stories. Many of the women we spoke with were even attacked by staff at the hotels.
I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and not one person came to help me.
And he's holding me down, and the other guy is trying to take off my bathing suit.
The first night I was here, I was sexually assaulted by one of the staff.
Time and again, women told us that they were frustrated by the reaction of the resorts and that the Canadian tour companies let them down.
Speaking out definitely has helped.
Christine Damon is one of those women. In March of 2018, she went with her 2 young sons and elderly parents to the Grand Bahia Principe Resort in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. On the last night of their vacation, when she was alone, walking back to her room, she says she was approached by a man in uniform.
You're not scared because this is a security guard who's come up.
Of course.
This is the guy who's there to protect you.
Oh, of course. Never, ever, ever, ever for a second was I ever scared or had any tiny little thought of danger, ever, right up until it was too late.
Too late was when Christine was escorted to the wrong building and then, out of nowhere, attacked by the guard.
And I was pinned up against the wall. And then he was kissing my face, and he said, beautiful girl, and then he just lifted up my long dress, and then there was a full rape in full sense of the word.
Raped by the very person who was hired by the resort to protect her.
His job is to keep me safe. That's why I assumed he was escorting me home. Instead, he rapes me.
You decide you're going to go and you're going to file a report. You want something to be done about this.
So I went to the front desk. I said, this needs to be documented. There's got to be some sort of report I would fill out.
W5 has obtained a copy of the incident report. Christine is promised that her claim would be investigated.
At any point, did anyone from the resort, the manager, the security manager, did anyone say to you, this is a crime, we need to call the police?
No, not at all.
The Canadian government warns women about travel to both the Dominican Republic and Mexico because of the risk of sexual violence. Toronto lawyer Loretta Merritt, who specializes in sexual assault cases, says right now she has a file full of complaints.
This file represents 6 different women who've come to you saying, I was sexually abused in the Dominican Republic by hotel staff.
Correct.
In 1 year.
In 1 year. Between July of 2017 and July of 2018.
All by staff?
A couple different resorts. Bartender. This one just says employee. I can't remember who that was. The baggage guy. Entertainment staff.
6 complainants to this one lawyer in 1 year, all alleging the people who were supposed to keep guests safe instead left them traumatized.
That seems like a big number.
It seemed like a big number to me too, and that's why I started to question how much action is being taken by the resorts. And then on another level, what are the tour operators doing if these incidents come to their awareness? They can always say, if you don't take proper steps to ensure that people are safe on your resort, we won't book tours there.
Christine Damon says when she reported her attack to resort staff, she was frustrated by their lack of action. She says 2 months later, the resort told her the security guard had been fired. W5 went to the Dominican Republic, trying to get answers from the resort.
The Grand Bahia Principe is just up the beach, and we made numerous requests for an on-camera interview. We just wanted to find out how often does this happen and what do they do about it. They refused that request, but they did email us a statement. They say that there's no place for sexual harassment on any of their properties. They also say they have strict protocols for when allegations are made, including calling the police and offering medical assistance if required.
The Grand Bahia Principe is a huge complex with its own beach, several pools, and hundreds of staff working to make sure everyone is having a good time.
Do you feel the resort took seriously what happened to you and has taken steps to try to protect other
Absolutely
women?
not. They never took it seriously. I think they're kind of used to this sort of thing, to be honest.
Desperate victims plead for help,
I just want to call the police.
but are met with indifference.
And he said no?
He said no.
When W5 continues.
Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic has everything a tourist could possibly want. The beaches are beautiful, the people are warm, and there's no shortage of stress-free, all-inclusive resorts. Christine Damon says she was raped by a security guard at the Grand Bahia Principe in Punta Cana, and that the resort did nothing to help her.
Well, that's pretty.
Alicia Pickering, who lives just outside Vancouver, says she faced similar roadblocks by the resort in Mexico, where she says she was drugged and gang raped by a group of fellow tourists.
I remember being rushed by ambulance to a small Mexican hospital. The doctor was kind. They did a physical. Not soon after, I was met by the Mexican Attorney General. The Attorney General asked me several times that night if I wanted to press charges.
Still extremely shaken, Alicia decides not to press charges. Her daughter Lauren, who had been worried for hours about her mom's absence during the attack, convinced her the next morning to go to the room where one of the men was staying.
I covered the peephole so they couldn't see who it was, and he had opened the door, and then I lost it.
So the door opens, and you're looking into the eyes of one of the men who had done this to you.
Yeah, I recognized him right away. He refused to look in my direction because he knew I had the camera. But he looked at her and he goes, well, I wasn't the only one. So, you know, that makes it okay, I guess.
Now, armed with these photographs of one of her attackers and a room number, Alicia decides she will file a police report. But it's just hours before her flight back to Canada.
You said to the manager, call the police. I've been gang raped by guests at this resort. And he said no?
Yeah, he said no. I said, please, like, I'm running out of time, and I'm not leaving this office until you call the police.
Riu Hotels would not comment on any details of the attack, citing privacy issues. But in an email to W5 said they have a strict policy of zero tolerance against any type of aggression or harassment against our guests or employees. They say their priority is the well-being of the victim. What about Canadian tour companies? What responsibilities do they have? They do, after all, fly hundreds of thousands of Canadians to all-inclusives in Mexico and the Caribbean every year. Alicia flew to Mexico on Sunwing and thought their representative on the ground would help her.
The Sunwing agent came to the manager's office and I begged him, please, you know, our flight's leaving soon. I just want to call the police. And he says, well, there isn't time to take you.
W5 made several attempts to talk to Sunwing's senior management, but the company said a spokesperson was not available. Instead, they issued a statement to W5. We provided her with the option to return at a later date in the event that initiating this process could not be completed that same day. They go on to say she chose to leave on her originally scheduled flight. Sunwing says it's extremely empathetic about what occurred to Ms. Pickering and treated this matter very seriously. But Alicia claims the Sunwing representative was anything but empathetic.
It sort of felt like I was just asking for another towel for the pool area. I couldn't understand why there was no compassion, no empathy, no sense of shock. This hotel should be blacklisted at minimum. If, you know, something bad happens and you can't get any help when you're down there, why are you still sending people to this resort? Why do you maintain a relationship?
Christine Damon from outside Toronto knows exactly what Alicia is talking about. She too left her resort the day after her attack and also felt frustrated with Transat, the Canadian tour company that flew her to the Dominican Republic.
Transat Vacations' response to you was what? Ultimately, what was their...
It was indifference. It was indifference, and it was lack of responsibility on their part.
Transat told W5, quote, although situations of this kind are extremely rare, we urge our customers who ever encounter them to immediately report them to their Transat representatives at destination and to file a police report. Our role is to assist our customers as soon as we are aware of the situation.
Would you like tour operators to give out warnings to their customers? At this place, there have been this number of reports.
Yes, that would be a great start. At least that would put it in the public discourse, because currently, it never even dawns on anyone that you could be unsafe as a woman on a resort.
Global Affairs routinely issues travel advisories for Canadians. Mexico and the Dominican Republic have been flagged as safety risks for women travelers. But the Canadian government doesn't give specific information about how or where women have been attacked. In fact, W5 had to file repeated access to information requests just to get this very basic information. Last year, Global Affairs assisted 13 Canadians who were assaulted in the Dominican Republic. In Mexico, there were 24 reports filed, but the government does not distinguish between an assault and a sexual assault.
We take the safety and security of Canadian women traveling very seriously, and we want them to be aware of environments that they're in that could be dangerous.
Pam Goldsmith-Jones is the Global Affairs Parliamentary Secretary.
Our travel advisories are excellent. They are kept up to date as much as a weather advisory is kept up to date.
Are those travel advisories effective, though, if they don't specifically name the resorts where there have been issues and the numbers of women who have made allegations against those resorts?
Well, we don't have full information. We have partial information. We also don't share things if this is not what somebody who's been through this wants.
It doesn't even differentiate between assault and sexual assault.
We recognize that we should go further, and we're working to that end. The material that's there has not been as current as it should be. It's a priority for us.
You're reviewing the travel advisories now because there's an understanding that it has not been as fulsome as it should be.
They've been very good, but in particular when we're talking about sexual assault, what kind of assault and perhaps the incidence of it, we could do better.
Until that government travel advisory system has been revamped, Canadian travelers have no other option than to turn to social media to warn each other.
I've probably spent hundreds of hours on TripAdvisor researching.
Chris Love from Dallas, Texas, says she was raped at a resort in Mexico by a staff security guard.
October 19.
Like Alicia and Christine, frustrated by a lack of action, she turned to TripAdvisor.
Within minutes, he grabbed me, forced me into the jungle, bushes, and raped me.
But the website kept pulling her posts down.
I would say the first post probably made it 6 or 8 hours. And then I'd go on, delete it, and I'd go post it again.
Was TripAdvisor telling you why they were deleting your post?
That it was not family friendly and considered hearsay. And the reason for it not being family friendly was the rape, that word, that 4-letter word, rape. That's not family friendly.
Chris was persistent. She kept reposting and reposting. And then finally, in November of 2017, TripAdvisor announced a change in policy. Now, a red banner is placed on top of a resort review if there have been any allegations of sexual assault, a warning that stays up for 90 days.
Saw us trying to take a selfie. He was like,
Didn't work out very well.
take a picture?
At the very least, TripAdvisor has given survivors a voice.
I put a warning on TripAdvisor. I was desperate to try to get justice for myself and my daughter, to be able to hold the men accountable for what they had done. And while I might not get justice in the sense that you and I might think warrants for this situation, I know that one day there will be justice for me, and I take comfort in that.
There have been no charges or arrests in Alicia's case, and the resort guard that Christine alleges raped her has been fired, but also not charged.
Sex is big business in America. And while some of the people in that business aren't there by choice, many consider themselves sex workers, willing participants in the nation's multi-billion-dollar sex trade. Across the country, it's a dangerous and illegal industry. Some workers think changing the laws around prostitution could make it safer. But what would that look like? I came to Nevada to see the only place in the US where sex for money is legal and out of the shadows. Deep in the desert, you'll find the only legal prostitution in America. There are 21 legal brothels in the US, all here in Nevada, and none are more recognizable than Dennis Hoff's Moonlight Bunny Ranch. You're looking at the exception, the most elite, privileged form of commercial sex in this country. It takes some resources to even get this job. You have to be able to afford a license from the local sheriff and pass a thorough background check. I came here to hear the arguments in favor of legal and regulated sex work.
I'll take you to my room.
The women here are independent contractors and call themselves working girls. The house takes half of whatever they make during a transaction, what they'd call a party or a booking. Tiarte is 22 and was a dancer until she came here 2 months ago. While you were dancing, were you ever approached to do this illegally?
Yeah, I was propositioned every night.
And did you ever even consider it?
No, I never thought I'd be doing this. I was like, oh, I'll never do that. But then I heard like it's legal and where the girls are tested, like I gave it a chance. To be honest, I used to like talk down on it, like paying someone for sex, like, but now my whole mindset's changed and I'm a part of it. I got picked like my first time and I was like, I'm scared.
And then how did that happen? Like, how did that go down?
It was good. Like, I just walked him through the house and then we came back in my room and we booked. It was good to get it off my shoulders because like my first time standing in lineup, it is intimidating.
Was it what you thought it would be?
Yeah, you just stand there, say your name and see what he does.
No, but the first booking that you had.
It was really easy. It went really smooth and it was what I thought it was gonna be. As soon as I found out I was gonna be doing this, I kind of started going through goals in my head, like, what am I gonna do with this money? You know, I need to start a retirement fund. There's like a couple days where I'll go without booking.
And what's that like?
I mean, it sucks, but I try and stay positive.
How long do you see yourself doing this?
The next 8 years.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
8 is such a specific number and you want to be here for 8 years. Do you have a number goal that you want to hit by that time?
Like money-wise, I should have $500,000 by then, easily. Easily. Yeah. I should have $500,000 in the next few years. I'm not gonna lie, I'm expensive, and if they can afford it and if they're willing to do it, I will, you know, break my boundaries to a certain extent. Some people look at it like, oh, she's a prostitute, she's a whore. Yeah, I am, but it's a job, and it's not gonna be forever. I'm getting money. That's great.
Yeah, hold on. Is that...
That's the bell.
What's
so
the bell?
That's a lineup. That would be the time the customer will stand in front and then the girls will come out. We kind of have to hurry or else they're gonna start without us.
So there's a lineup happening, which means a customer just came through and the girls are going to line up and the customer is going to take their pick.
Hi, I'm Tiara.
So all of the girls are doing introductions. Everyone's dressed up, and it's funny because their hands are behind their back and it seems like they're a little shy from where I'm looking, but they're introducing themselves to the client, and he looks like he just picked a girl, the one straight in the middle, and he is walking her back now.
So I didn't get picked, but that's okay.
Yeah? Can you kind of explain to me how it feels every time, or is it just when it happens, it happens?
Yeah, it's just if he picks you, great. If not, then you wait for the next spell.
Hey, you guys, you got to calm it down in there. Yeah. All right, we ready? We're going to have some fun.
Dennis Hoff is the owner and proprietor of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch and 6 other Nevada brothels. He's a businessman and a libertarian with political aspirations. And when it comes to laws around prostitution, he's one of the biggest advocates for legalization. Do you feel like you are empowering these women?
Oh, there's no question. There's no question. These are true businesswomen. We're empowering these girls. I mean, over half of our girls have college educations. 20-some% have master's degrees. I have 3 PhDs working for me. One of them is a professor at UNLV and a working girl for me. These girls are real businesswomen.
How many girls are applying to work for you a month?
1,000. If it's some girl that I think I'm really interested in, which would be typically a very attractive girl, a hot blonde, or a mixed girl that I think is unique, then I might get involved in it myself. We think we are a family. We're all a close-knit little community here that supports each other. The difference is we can have sexual interaction too, and the girls do it.
Can you define the word pimp in your own terms?
A pimp, in its simplest term, is a man that brings men or women to girls for sex. Okay, so in the simplest term, I'm a pimp. But I have a license. I have a business license to do this.
So you're a legal pimp?
I'm a legal pimp, absolutely. But in the street vernacular, in most people's thoughts, a pimp is a guy that goes to Kansas City, grabs underage girls, runaways, fills them up with drugs, and owns them and hauls them around to Oakland, Las Vegas, the sexual cesspool of America. So when you legalize something, who do you take out of the business? You take the underage girls out, because every girl here has to go down and get a business license, be fingerprinted, photographed. They run the federal check on them. Who else can't get in the business? The pimps. This business, the prostitution business worldwide, is a dirty, disgusting, drug-ridden, exploitive, disease-ridden business till you legalize it. And when you make it legal, everything changes. The whole game changes.
I think once you get past the photos of nudity everywhere, you realize that this is kind of just like any other business establishment. They don't even use, I guess, sexual terms in casual conversation about it. They refer to it as a business transaction because that's what they see it as. And just like any other business, there are safety regulations here. The women here go through thorough background checks and weekly STD tests, and someone could listen in at any time. There are security cameras and panic buttons, which is a lot different than the outside world of illegal prostitution.
Hi, I'm Willow. I've been here about 10 years.
And what's your title?
My title?
Yeah, like what do you
I'm
call
a prostitute. I'm a hooker.
If a young girl says that she wants to do this one day, what's typically your response?
No. Have you thought it through? Like, because no, it's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. Like, no, go to school first. You know, I'm not going to be like telling kids like, you know, come work here. No, ooh, gross.
Yeah?
Yeah, ooh, gross. No. Unless you're being a hooker on the street, this is a better option. Unless you're stripping, this might be a better option. If you go into the outside world, like we're going into their space, right? We're going into their house, into their hotel room, places that they've scoped out, right? That's their space.
A lot of the safety that you talk about is because you're in a brothel. So this is kind of the environment that it's already happening in. Do you think that it would be smart to legalize prostitution and let people do this independently outside of a brothel environment?
The thing is, what you're asking is something that's already happening. Like, you're asking me if it's safe, like, but it's happening regardless. So what's the harm in legalizing it? Like, it's only putting more safety measures in for the girls. You know, somebody's might be taking charge of their license plate. Some people can call the cops if they feel unsafe or insecure. Like, you know, you have that safety net. Yeah, I think legalizing it is, the best way to go.
There are a few different legal models for approaching the sex trade. Legalization is what we saw at the Bunny Ranch. It is the introduction of laws to control the sex trade, which means it's highly regulated. But there are other models across the world when it comes to prostitution. One is criminalization. Every part of the sex trade is illegal, and people are arrested and charged for it. It's the policy across the country, including where I'm from, in D.C. The vast majority of the sex trade in the U.S. happens outside of brothels and illegally. I wanted to find out how criminalizing prostitution affects people working in the sex trade, so I met up with Leah Monadas, a local artist and activist, who engaged in what is known as survival sex during a period of homelessness.
So this area here in DC is like where probably a lot of the girls have worked. It's kind of transitioned from uptown a little to here, and then it goes all the way down for about probably a half mile, maybe a mile that way. The thing is, when you're a trans woman of color, what happens is that, like, particularly when you're doing sex work, a lot of the men don't respect you. They don't really think of you as a human being. They don't, you're just like an object to them. Even less so than like a cisgender woman. Oftentimes, they're not afraid to hurt you. And additionally, because you're a sex worker, they feel like, well, she can't even report this to the police, so I can do whatever I want to you, right?
Did you feel like you couldn't report it to the police?
Absolutely. Because what am I going to tell what's my excuse for being in the strange man's car, right? Or what's my excuse for being in this man's apartment or house?
Yeah.
So it's terrifying, it's scary. You don't want to report these things to the police. So consequently, a lot of sex workers' lives are really fragile. It's really scary. And a lot of the girls out here do die or get injured, and oftentimes it doesn't get reported.
Were there experiences that you had while you were doing this for your own survival that you felt like your life was at enormous risk?
Yeah, so there were a few times where I was almost murdered.
You say that so casually. That's like such a...
When you've been through this, you are strong as a rock. I have no fear anymore because I've been so close to death several times. I was in a car. This guy was speeding off. He didn't want to give me a donation. He ended up pulling a knife on me. And actually, before I jumped out, he stabbed me twice. And then finally was able to open the door and I was able to get out. But I moved out of like probably 40-mile-per-hour plus car. And I just rolled around. And I honestly, when I got up after rolling around, I was surprised I was still alive. And I was like, okay, adrenaline rushing, I'd just been stabbed. So then I ran and I took off, right? And amazingly, I thought he was done, but he turned the car around and then tried to chase me to run me over. So it was just, and then the worst part is I couldn't even report this to police. Like, what am I gonna say? Like, I was doing sex work and some man then tried to kill me?
What are some of the ways decriminalizing prostitution would make it safer for sex workers?
Well, for one, they could screen their clients a little better. They could talk to them a little more in the street and they kind of assess, maybe even look around the car. They'll have a little extra time so they could see that knife maybe he's stashing like by the door. They might see a gun that they didn't see before. They might be able to like get their license plates down because they have more time. That way if something bad does happen, they can report it. Honestly, just being able to report stuff, like, you know, like if someone hurts you, you weren't afraid then to go to the cops. Yeah, I mean, I laugh about it because I have to create this barrier.
Of course, yeah.
But like, the truth is, it was completely terrifying. Like, I don't wish that upon any human being ever. But, you know, it happens, and it happens. You know, any one of these girls, if I can do anything to help a young trans person or other sex worker, cis woman, to not have that happen to them, I will do it. I don't care what the cost is, because I don't want that to ever happen to another human being again. I'm not a piece of trash. I'm a human being, and I don't deserve to be treated that way. I'm breaking down a little.
You're absolutely
People don't
right.
deserve that. Yeah.
No one does.
Stories like Leia's aren't that rare. We've heard similar stories of violence from sex workers who didn't want to talk to us on camera. But because the sex trade is an underground industry, national statistics are really hard to come by. Here's what we do know. At least 34 sex workers across the US were murdered in 2017. And a study of New York street sex workers found that up to 80% had experienced violence while working. Leia's experience is representative in another way. Nationally, trans women engage in sex work at a much higher rate than people who aren't trans. And in DC, 85% of trans sex workers are Black and Latino. Now, Leia's story is at the center of a push for change.
We're headed into a briefing at the DC Council talking about laws surrounding commercial sex. And in this area, there's a movement pushing for decriminalization.
Decriminalization is the removal of laws criminalizing the sex trade. Rather than regulating the sex trade, decriminalization just means people don't get charged for it. Removing criminal penalties is the logical first step for advocates like Leia, and it could eventually be a stepping stone on the way to legalization. This is a super early stage hearing, and Newsy had the only cameras in the room.
So good morning, everybody. I am Councilmember David Grosso. I'm an at-large council member here in the District of Columbia. The fact is that decriminalizing sex work, moving towards a approach that is more based in human rights is something that has been on my agenda now since Amnesty International came out a year ago with changing their approach.
It's not just Amnesty International. The World Health Organization and the UN's Program on AIDS have also supported removing criminal penalties for prostitution.
I want to make that clear that not all sex workers do sex work out of desperation, and some choose that profession. But I felt that, for me, I had no other choice.
We have a few minutes to take questions, and I'd love to facilitate some questions for the panel. So we'll start in the back, please. Go ahead.
Why would we decriminalize a profession that has such danger like that? And why go back to it as opposed to go through social services to get out of that, right? That's going to be a common question that people are going to ask.
So when you're doing something that's illegal, it becomes difficult to report it, right?
So consequently, if you decriminalize sex work, if a man knows that he could potentially go to jail for assaulting me or pulling a knife on me, he's less likely to do it. But if he knows I'm not even probably going to report this, he knows he's more likely to get away with murder.
There's many reasons why there's violence. They don't inherently relate to sex work as a practice. It's more due to the criminalization than the work. So that's my broad answer.
There is widespread harm being done in the sex trade. There's exploitation, there's violence, there's discrimination, incarceration, disease, and of course, stigma. But we've realized in our reporting that people experience the sex trade on a spectrum. One of the working girls we talked to off camera at the Bunny Ranch used to work here in DC illegally, but she worked for a high-end escort service like this one. On one end of that sex trade spectrum, you have things like the Bunny Ranch and maybe even these high-end escort sites. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have terrible instances of trafficking and exploitation. But in between, there's a whole range of experiences, from some of the people on Backpage to some of the most marginalized members of our communities who are in the streets and selling sex in order to survive. And the thing is, these laws affect all of these people. So finding a solution, whatever that solution may be, is way more complicated than you think.
This policy to decriminalize commercial sex could be super controversial. I sat down with the council member who proposed the legislation to talk about people's concerns.
One of the pet peeves I have as a policymaker is that we keep trying the same thing over and over again and it doesn't work. For something like this, where you have two consenting adults that are exchanging some sort of money for sex, I don't see why that should have someone go to jail for that. But then also I think it's important that we remove the stigma from what this is about so that people can feel more comfortable asking for help if that's what they need.
Does this legislation encourage prostitution?
That's a trickier question. I don't think so, but we're not sure. And when you look at New Zealand, where they've already done this for over 10 years, we see that it doesn't.
Are you hopeful this will pass?
Hopeful is a good word. Yes, I always have hope, but I'm not confident that it will. I don't know if my colleagues are ready yet.
This is the first time Councilmember Grosso publicly introduces the legislation to decriminalize sex work, and it's a packed room, and people are pretty excited. You can tell that this is a really big deal.
Our goal should be to stop violence, not criminalize those who are working to survive. Sex workers are active members of the DC community too. And it's time we respect them with dignity, like we do the rest of the community. We're all human beings. Thank you.